From farm to table, the journey of cheese is one of tradition, craftsmanship and delicious transformation. Join us as we travel across the UK and explore the fascinating process behind how milk becomes one of the world's most beloved foods. Welcome to Cheese and Bees Presents, a Cheesemonger's Guide.
Welcome to A Cheesemonger's Guide, the show where curd nerds, cheese chasers and dairy dreamers come together in celebration of the finest cheeses Britain has to offer. In episode 2, we're heading off to the heart of the English countryside, Lincolnshire, to uncover the story behind one of the country's most iconic raw milk cheeses, Lincolnshire Poacher. Today we've been given special freedom of Alsaby Grange Farm, where tradition meets innovation, and every wheel of cheese tells a story. We'll be meeting those behind the cheese, Tim and Simon Jones, whose passion for farming and cheese making has really put Lincolnshire Poacher on the map. Then we'll head deep into the dairy to meet John, the head cheesemaker, whose craftsmanship is at the head of each of the batches that are made. He'll take us through the meticulous process that gives Lincolnshire Poacher its unique character, nutty, savoury and unmistakably British. So join me as we discover what it takes to make a truly great cheese. This is your Cheesemonger's Guide, and this is Lincolnshire Poacher. So today we've come all the way over to Alton in Lincolnshire, and we're going to see how Lincolnshire Poacher is made. So come on, let's go.
While head cheesemaker John was busy adding starter cultures and starting the initial stirring process, we headed down to the farm to have a chat with Tim in the milking parlour.
Does that make a difference to the actual milk itself?
The fat and protein is different.
Yeah.
Morning and afternoon, and there's a slightly bigger gap. So
Sure.
it's
The cheesemakers we've spoken to, they'll usually have one batch of milk in the morning that they've just got from the local farm.
Yeah.
And this is where again you guys are a little bit different because you have your own cows and you can choose.
Well, we're using. So this afternoon, cows will be milked. That milk will go in the tank and get cooled down.
Yes.
And then tomorrow morning at 3:30, the cows are milked, and the warm milk, literally warm straight from the cow, goes into the vat.
Right.
Literally, and then
Yeah.
the afternoon milk. This afternoon's milk will go on top of it. So milk's only ever 12 hours old.
Sure.
And then cheese making begins, and for us that's crucial.
Yes.
It's like going into your garden and pulling vegetables, and suddenly we're all Gordon Ramsay because it's
Yeah.
delicious. Because it's in perfect condition. It's not
Absolutely.
buying it from the supermarket. It's the same with the
Agreed.
milk. The lactose, the sugar in the milk hasn't started to break down. So
Yes,
doesn't mean you make good cheese. It just gives you a shot at it.
Yeah.
Because you can still foul up good ingredients
Of
from your
course.
garden, and you can with milk, but it gives you a shot at it.
Yeah. And with obviously time, experience, all these sorts of things, it starts to get a bit easier, doesn't it?
Well, definitely, and our cheese has changed over the years so much. So originally the recipe was this thing, and then over time we've learned what we like, how our milk behaves, and it's changed. I mean, I'll show you the make sheets actually.
So on that question, so you talk to all sorts of chefs and all sorts of people that come up with recipes and try it. How much is the cheese developing itself and gives its own sort of changes, and how much is it that comes down to your own, actually I'm happy with that? Do you know what I mean? Obviously I'm sure there's more than just one person tasting and happy with the taste of it. How much goes, well actually it needs to be better here, it needs to be better there, we need to...
It's a bit. I think it's
a fair question?
It's a really fair question, and I think it's us understanding the milk and going, gosh, when we did this, because it's quite often it's mistakes or change. You change things and you go, oh, when we did that happened, and so should we do a bit more of that or less of that? And
some mistakes can have a good outcome.
Yeah, definitely that. And it's just been a journey of understanding and getting really into the detail of how the milk behaves and how our starter behaves and how they interact and what we like.
Yeah,
so you get in the cheese store and you go, okay, we've tasted these cheeses and all these cheeses were a little bit slower. Slowest occasion. Oh my gosh, these are our favourite cheeses. So then you go, okay, what can we do? How can we change the recipe to go in that direction? But the over 30-year period, when you look at day one to now, it's astonishing. The difference in the recipe I'll show you. It's amazing. It's like a different cheese. And actually, John. So I'm not even sure John was born when we started making cheese. and he looks at the make sheets from back then and goes, "Oh my God, what were you doing? That's terrible." Because now we're so different. We're doing it, and it's not right or wrong. It's just how we do it now, and what our DNA is now here, not there. We've moved over time, and we've learned.
Evolving everything.
Yeah, and when we started, we knew nothing.
Yeah, and again, this is what
we were amateurs.
I preach this all the time. It's nature, it's science. It's nothing stays the same.
It's everything, and that's it's a crazy mix of art and science where part and John's got a fine art degree and he's got butchery skills. He was a butcher as well, and that's perfect. He's into food, but he's got that touch and feel, so he can do the numbers and the science which you have to do to go on your cheese making journey. You've got to get the numbers right, but also you just have to go. This feels really tight. We need to move on and go quicker or slower, or cut it finer, or whatever it is. And that's it's both. It's art and science. It really is a really close. It's very much both.
Right, let's get back and see how John's getting on at the creamery. So after our lovely warm welcome, we got kitted out in our PPE so we could get a bit more hands-on with John in the creamery. We also had hats and hairnets and full-on overalls, all to stop the risk of cross-contamination. I can't lie, the hats were very exciting to me. As you can see, we're both looking good, so let's go down to the creamery.
An hour ago, I got these stirrers to go up and down and dig out a channel. Yeah. And then I cleared this area and put the sieve in. And then we open the taps now. But normally I do all that when I first come in. So normally I do all those bits and then open the taps. But today I did it half an hour ago. Half an hour ago. So it's been sat on the bottom for half an hour. That's not normal for us. Right. Normally it sits for 5 minutes just while we dig a channel, get this ready, and then we open the tap straight away. That's like the bare minimum you can do. Right. You can't pitch it for any less time because you need to have a bit of a channel. You need to do a few other bits. Yeah. So it's basically Poacher is the shortest possible pitch you can do. You let it settle, and while it's settling, you quickly get them bits ready. And then red's different because we want it to be wetter. It doesn't matter if we have a bit of waste today as well because we don't separate. We don't separate the dyed way. We only separate normal way. So if we get a bit of overspill or whatever, it doesn't really matter today.
So once again, you can see that the whey draining process is very different to what we had at Monkland, where we drained the vat by tilting it. However, there is still very much a manual element to the process. As you can see, John is letting Pete have a go there. This was so hard. The curds are incredibly heavy and John made it look really easy, so hats off to him, really. So now we have a little transition that was actually Tim's idea of speeding up the draining of the whey, which looks so cool. Because we're making Lincolnshire red today instead of regular Lincolnshire Poacher, the whey isn't used to make Lincolnshire Poacher butter, but it normally would be. So the farm really uses every last drop of their milk and doesn't waste anything. You can then see the cheddaring process. Well, John described it as half cheddaring, where the curds are cut and then stacked almost at a diagonal level on top of each other all the way down the vat, which was huge, by the way. John was kind enough to let me have a go, but I don't think I'll be becoming a cheesemaker anytime soon.
Yeah, I've come a little bit off on that one, I think. A little bit. I feel bad for laughing at you now.
I was most impressed with the number of renewable projects on the farm, including their giant wind turbine, their solar panels, and a straw pellet boiler for heating the milk that they make using straw that they've baled themselves. In fact, the farm generates more electricity than they use each year. But anyway, let's go and learn a bit more about the girls that make Lincolnshire Poacher cheese possible.
It's almost got that sort of slightly yeasty, it's lovely and dry, and we've got a few grains in there. We've got some fermented grains in there, brewer's grains, and some maize silage and grass silage that we've kept from last year. And that's the Himalayan salt. So they use that as a salt lick, and that helps their digestion, and they get minerals from that as well. They get seaweed in the diet as well. They get all sorts. But we used to get these when the cows were out on without this. We'd get these really funky flavoured wild cheeses. So counterintuitively, we stopped making cheese in the summer. We just made through the winter months when we had a really good ration that worked for the cows and for the milk and the cheese. But now we've balanced it out. So, and we've learned about the cheesemaker as well. So both things. So they get the food they need to get the right milk, and so we can get much more consistent cheese through the year. We used to get these real wild changes through the seasons, but that's part of the reason for changing the recipe, is to get more consistency.
Sure.
It's still within boundaries, but it's much closer than it used to be.
There's a huge amount of science in cheese making, so now here's John telling us about bacteriophage.
Culture. Basically, when you make cheese, there's something called, have you heard of phage before?
No.
Bacteriophage? No. So there's, a bit like humans, there's viruses that attack humans. Well, incredible as it sounds, there are viruses that attack bacteria. Okay. It's actually the smallest living thing on Earth. Okay, it's literally the smallest living thing on Earth. It's called phage, right? And it's a big deal for cheesemakers, because if you add, let's say we took one starter culture, added it every day, same every day, what you'll find is that phage can live in an environment. So it probably lives in that environment. It's everywhere. It's on your skin. It's on everything. It's tiny. And what you find is that it will build up over time if you use the same starter culture. And eventually, you get you could end up with what's called a phage attack. So you'll put your starter culture in, you'll start cultivating your bacteria. But if the phage is in the air and it's in the vat and it's in large enough numbers, what will happen is the phage can attack the bacteria faster than the bacteria can multiply. And you get what's called a phage attack, and it stops the acidity rising, and you cannot make cheese. You literally can't make cheese. It would just, the whole vat would be ruined. Ruined, yeah, nothing you can do with it. And it's never happened to me. Whatever, yeah. It's never happened to me, and it's not really very common. But the reason for that is we use 2 starters rather than 1. So if you use 2, the virus never has a chance to build up enough. Yes, because there's not enough of the one bacteria to grow on. So that's one thing. The other thing is good hygiene. So if you clean down at the end of every day, sterilize everything, that also helps a lot, obviously. And then there is another reason as well. Can't remember. But I have heard of other cheesemakers having issues with it. I think if you ask Simon, he once had an issue with it where he made, I think, a used milk cheese in this vat years and years, like 15 years ago or something. And I can't remember the reason, but he had a phage attack, and the acidity, nothing happened. The whole lot just goes in the bin. Yeah. So it is a real risk for cheesemakers, and that's why you have 2 starters. So every cheesemaker you visit, some places have 3. 2 is the minimum, I think. Some places will have more than 3 because they might want to make different flavoured cheeses. And the culture will influence the outcome of the cheese as well. So one thing we find is, you'll have to ask Tim on the details, but I think RA24, so it's called RA because it's rapid action. So RA24 and RA21. RA24, I think, is the less aggressive starter and tends to give more gentle flavours. Like less acidity and less sort of aggressive sort of, those like wild sort of flavours you get in Poacher sometimes. That tends to produce less of that, and the 21 tends to produce more of that, but not always. It's just a bit of a generalised. So what we do, well, this is how I do it. I suppose there's no other way to do it, because the way I do it is the way you do it. So it's 24 today. So tomorrow we do 21. So put RA21. And then the way I work it out is I look at the previous day's make, and this is what I was on about earlier, about using the least amount possible. So yesterday, which is the most recent information I've got, they milled at 6 hours and 40 minutes from renneting. Okay, so if it's 6 hours 40 minutes, that's just over our target time of 6 hours 30. So it's ever so slightly slow, but it's pretty good. That's about what we want. So they used 12 grams of starter exactly. So if I added a tiny bit more, we might hit our target of 6 hours 30. So I would say 12.1 grams might do it. So that 100th of a gram could take 10 minutes off our day, cheese making. Literally 100th of a gram. Like we're talking like, you could blow on the scale like that, and that would be like 300th of a gram. So it's incredible difference what that tiny bit of starter will do. Yeah. But you have to remember, unlike an ingredient like salt, where you add the salt, you've got the salt. Bacteria, when you add the bacteria, it multiplies. So you go from that to a whole vat's worth in a morning. Yeah. So it's not like it's an active ingredient; it's a living ingredient. Yeah. Right. So 21 tomorrow. So I said 12 grams. So we'll do 12.1. And you can see how little 12.1 grams is, and we keep the pots the same and everything. So the other one's still up there. So 21, so the other one will say 24 on it. Even the pots have to be kept separate, because if I mix them up, you're still risking fire necessarily. If you wanted to make it faster, I could just put 3 times that amount in, it would be a faster cheese. Yeah. And then, yeah, it literally is, yeah.
Affect lots of other things as well.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be just making that same cheese the same.
I think I have asked other cheesemakers, why do you do it like that? Why not just do that? They don't really have an answer. I think it's like one of them traditions again. What you'll find is as well, a lot of the cheesemakers will say, well, I was taught to make cheese like that. Sure. And so that's what I do. And it's like, if they got taught to make cheese at a cheddar maker's, they make how a cheddar maker makes. Sure. And if they got taught to make how a Wensleydale make, like this is Wensleydale style, that's how they'll make it. It's just, yeah. And Simon was taught to make cheese like this, and so we make cheese like this.
After Tim had kindly shared his lunch with us, a gorgeous fish pie made by none other than his mum, it was time to get back to work.
The slabs of curd had started being put through the mill and then mixed in with salt. You can see Tim getting stuck in there. He says he always likes to go down around this time and help out with this part of the process to save the boys some time. Pete had a go too, and there you can see him mixing it all up with everyone. This bit did take a while, but definitely not as long as what it took at Monkland because it's on a much bigger scale. However, similarly to Monkland, the best part for me was getting to eat the cheese curds because they're so delicious. It's just my best part. The curds are then shoveled into the moulds, and the moulds are overfilled in order to make sure that when the curds meld together and settle, that they don't end up being too small for the mould. So they do go round and fill them all up a second time just to make sure they're not too little. We were then lucky enough to go and see the cheese store, which was magical. Like, it was ginormous. Everyone there calls it the Cheese Cathedral because it's so big and so impressive. There were thousands of cheeses in there, and it was so cool to see them at different stages of the aging process. We even got to meet Florence, the cheese turning robot. She uses sensors in order to track the cheeses, turn them round, place them back. And can you believe that this was all done by one man before they got Florence? On our way out, we were lucky enough to see the girls being taken in for their afternoon milking. It was such a spectacle to see, and you can see how well looked after these ladies are. Now back over to Pete at Cheese and Bees HQ.
So that was our trip to Lincolnshire Poacher. We hope you enjoyed it. And that goes to show the passion and the feeling that goes into these projects that people get involved with. Tim and Simon are part of all sorts of different groups and different societies that actually get behind making cheese the best it can possibly be for animal welfares and for the quality of milk and all of those things that we love so much. Now, Lincolnshire Poacher is a beautiful cheese, really nutty and complex flavours, nice and dry in its texture. Goes very well with all sorts of manner of drinks, so you could have a white wine Chardonnay, something like a Pinot Noir. But the beautiful thing about this is it works really, really well with all sorts of things. It's very versatile, so you could have it with beer and some ales. You could have it with a nice smooth whiskey. Would go very, very well if you're looking to pair it with some other drinks. Even a cider, because the natural curd that they use here has that lovely sort of nuttiness that would go very well with something that will cut through it a little bit more as well. So goes well with any sort of fruits really. And one particular thing that we like to talk about at the same time is this particular stuff here. This is Lincolnshire plum loaf, a very traditional plum bread that we get from a company called Pocklington's Bakery, and they actually make the original recipe for Lincolnshire plum bread. Very rich, very doughy, lovely moist cheese favouring bread, and they go fantastically well together. So get some Lincolnshire Poacher, get some plum bread, get some drinks together, and really enjoy the Lincolnshire culture.